Quietum Plus is getting pushed in front of people who are already tired, frustrated, and looking for something that feels simple. That is exactly why this conversation matters. When a product shows up wrapped in the right words, the right promises, and the right emotional timing, it can feel convincing before it has even been examined. And that is where most people make the mistake. This is not just about a supplement. It is about the moment when someone dealing with hearing discomfort, constant ringing, or that draining sense that something is off decides to trust a product because the message sounds right. The problem is that a good sales narrative can make almost anything look like the answer. So the real question is not why Quietum Plus is popular. The real question is whether the interest around it is built on a solid idea or on a message designed to hit people when they are most vulnerable. In this review, the goal is simple. Strip away the emotional pull, look at Quietum Plus with a clear head, and break down what people should actually pay attention to before they spend money or create expectations that may not match reality. Because once health, hope, and marketing get mixed together, bad decisions become very easy. And before even looking at what Quietum Plus claims to do, there's one thing most people never stop to examine. It is not the product first. It is the state of mind they are in when the product appears. That changes everything. What Quietum Plus actually promises. This is where most reviews start getting soft, and that is a mistake. If you want to judge Quietum Plus clearly, the first step is not asking whether people like it. The first step is understanding exactly what is being sold to them. Quietum Plus is presented as a dietary supplement aimed at people who are looking for support for hearing health and relief from the kind of daily discomfort that slowly wears a person down. The marketing around it is built to sound reassuring. It leans into the idea of a natural formula, an easy routine, and a solution that feels accessible to people who are already exhausted from searching. That matters because products in this space do not win attention by sounding complicated. They win attention by sounding safe, simple, and hopeful. And that is precisely why this part deserves more attention than most people give it. A promise does not have to be false to be powerful. It only has to be emotionally well-timed. When someone is dealing with ringing in the ears, reduced focus, sleep disruption, or the fear that things may keep getting worse, even a carefully worded presentation can feel like proof before any real analysis begins. So the key here is to separate the structure of the promise from the strength of the evidence. Quietum Plus is not sold as just another bottle on a shelf. It is sold as a possible answer to a problem people feel every single day. That is why the first real layer of this review is not blind trust or instant rejection. It is clarity. What is the product saying it can support? How is that message being framed, and why does that framing work so well on people who are already looking for relief? Because once you see how the promise is built, the next question becomes much more important. If the message is this persuasive, what are people missing when they get interested too fast? What nobody notices in the first wave of excitement? This is where the real mistake usually begins, and it has less to do with the bottle than most people think. The first problem is not always the product itself. The first problem is the emotional speed of the buyer. Quietum Plus enters the picture at a moment when many people are already drained, annoyed, and mentally ready to believe that one good decision could finally bring relief. That emotional state changes how the product is seen. When someone has been dealing with ringing, pressure, distraction, poor sleep, or the constant feeling that something is not right, they do not evaluate an offer the same way they would evaluate a normal purchase. They are not just comparing features, they are reacting to hope. And hope can be expensive when it shows up before critical thinking does. That is why the early excitement around a product like Quietum Plus deserves more suspicion than praise. People often confuse a well-built promise with a trustworthy result. They start filling in the blanks on their own. If the message sounds natural, calm, and specific enough, the brain starts doing something dangerous. It begins to treat possibility like evidence. That is how expectations get inflated long before the product has earned them. And once that happens, the person is no longer asking the right questions. They are not asking what is proven, what is exaggerated, or what should be verified. They are asking whether this might be the thing that finally works. That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Because the moment emotion starts leading the decision, the marketing no longer has to work very hard. And that leads to the next layer most reviews handle badly. If people are already vulnerable when they see the promise, then the formula itself has to be examined in a much smarter way than just reading ingredient names out loud. How to look at the formula without getting distracted. This is the part where many videos lose people because they turn into a dull list of ingredient names and vague promises. That is not how this should be approached. When you look at Quietum Plus, the goal is not to be impressed by a formula just because it sounds natural or because the label includes several plant-based compounds. The real question is much more important. Was this formula built to genuinely support the product's main message, or was it built to sound convincing to people who are already searching for relief? That distinction matters. A long ingredient list can create the illusion of depth. It can make the product feel more complete, more scientific, and more trustworthy before the buyer has even stopped to think about how those ingredients connect to the promise being made. That is why reading the label is not enough. You have to look at the logic behind the formula. You have to ask whether the ingredients are there because they make the product look stronger, or because they create a meaningful case for what the supplement is supposed to support. This is also where people get pulled in by language that feels safe. Words like natural, herbal, gentle, and daily support can lower a person's guard fast. The formula starts sounding familiar, and familiarity creates comfort. But comfort is not proof. A product can feel well-designed long before it has been well-examined. And once someone starts trusting the feeling of the formula instead of the reasoning behind it, the review is already off track. That is why the formula should never be judged by how attractive it sounds. It should be judged by how clearly it supports the product's core claim without forcing the buyer to fill in the gaps with hope. And once you understand that, the next question gets sharper. If the formula sounds reassuring, is it the product people are trusting or the story wrapped around it? The product or the story attached to it? This is where Quietum Plus becomes more interesting. Because what people often trust first is not the supplement. It is the story built around it. A product like this is rarely sold through raw facts alone. It is sold through atmosphere. The message is designed to feel calm, reassuring, and almost personal. It tells the viewer that the formula is natural, that the process is simple, and that the answer may have been sitting in front of them the whole time. That kind of framing is powerful because it lowers resistance before the buyer has even started thinking critically. And that is the danger. When the narrative is built well, the product starts to feel more credible than it has actually proven itself to be. The viewer is no longer just hearing claims. They are absorbing a mood. They begin to feel that this option makes sense, that it sounds safer, that it sounds more thoughtful, that it sounds like the kind of thing a careful person would choose. But sounding careful and being reliable are not the same thing. That is why people need to separate the supplement from the emotional packaging around it. A strong story can make a weak evaluation feel complete. It can make unanswered questions feel less urgent. It can even make a person defend a purchase before they have any reason to. Once that happens, they are not responding to evidence anymore. They are responding to presentation. And this creates the next question that matters even more. If the message is built to connect so deeply with a certain kind of buyer, who is most likely to be pulled in by it first? Who gets pulled? In first, Quietum Plus does not appeal to everyone in the same way, and that is exactly why its message works. The people most likely to stop and pay attention are usually not casual shoppers. They are people who already feel worn down by an ongoing problem. They have noticed changes in their hearing. They are bothered by constant ringing. They are losing patience with the daily distraction, and they are tired of feeling like no clear answer has shown up. That emotional background matters more than most reviews admit. A person in that state is not just looking at a supplement. They are looking at the possibility of relief, control, and normalcy. That makes them easier to reach with a message that sounds calm, natural, and direct. The product starts to feel less like a purchase and more like a turning point. And that is where the risk grows, because when someone is emotionally ready for an answer, they can start trusting the feeling of the pitch more than the strength of the logic behind it. This is why products like Quietum Plus often connect fastest with people who have already tried other paths, felt disappointed, and become more open to anything that sounds simple and promising. Not because they are careless, but because frustration lowers resistance. It makes a well-framed offer feel more reasonable than it may actually be. And once you understand who the message reaches most easily, the next question becomes unavoidable. How do you tell the difference between genuine interest and a decision being pushed by impulse, urgency, and hope? The line between real interest and impulse buying. This is the point where a lot of people stop making a decision and start reacting instead. With Quietum Plus, that shift can happen fast. Someone sees a product that seems to match their frustration, the message sounds calm and believable, and suddenly the question is no longer whether the offer is solid. The question becomes whether they should act before they miss the chance. That is not careful evaluation. That is pressure wearing the mask of certainty. Real interest is slow enough to ask better questions. It looks at the claim, the framing, the promise, and the reasons the product feels convincing in the first place. Impulse buying does the opposite. It feeds on discomfort, urgency, and the hope that this one choice might fix what has been draining a person for weeks or even months. And once that emotional pressure takes over, weak reasoning starts to feel strong. That is why this distinction matters. A person who is genuinely interested wants clarity. A person being pulled by impulse wants relief now. Quietum Plus enters a space where that difference can get blurred very easily, especially when the buyer already feels tired of waiting, researching, and dealing with the same problem every day. The more personal the pain feels, the easier it becomes to mistake emotional readiness for proof. And once someone sees that difference clearly, the next part becomes unavoidable. If the product can attract attention this effectively, then it needs to be judged with balance, not emotion. What actually looks positive here, and where do the limitations start showing up? What looks strong and what should raise caution? If Quietum Plus is going to be judged fairly, then both sides have to stay on the table. On the positive side, the product clearly understands its audience. It is presented in a way that feels approachable, simple, and less intimidating than more aggressive health solutions. That alone gives it appeal. The natural positioning, the easy routine, and the focused message around hearing support make it attractive to people who want something that feels manageable. But that is also where caution starts. A product can be appealing without being deeply examined. The same qualities that make Quietum Plus easy to consider also make it easy to trust too quickly. The message is clean, the promise feels personal, and the framing is strong enough to make many people lower their guard before asking harder questions. That is a problem, because health products should never be judged only by how comfortable they sound. So the balanced view is this. Quietum Plus may look appealing because it speaks directly to a real frustration in a calm and convincing way. But that does not remove the need for caution, realistic expectations, and a clear separation between persuasive marketing and dependable conclusions. And once that balance becomes clear, another issue starts to surface. The real cost of believing too fast is often bigger than the price on the screen. The hidden cost of believing too fast. Most people think the risk of buying too fast is just losing money. That is only the surface. With a product like Quietum Plus, the bigger cost can be emotional. When someone already feels worn down by hearing issues ringing, poor focus, or the fear that things may get worse, they do not just buy a supplement. They buy a version of relief in their mind. They buy the hope that this time the search might end. And when that hope rises too fast, disappointment hits harder. That is what many reviews fail to say out loud. A rushed decision can create a cycle that drains more than a wallet. It can drain trust, patience, and judgment. The person starts with a strong expectation, then reality feels slower or less clear than they imagined, and the frustration becomes even heavier because now there is another layer on top of the original problem. Not just discomfort, but the feeling of being pulled in again by something that sounded right at the exact wrong moment. That is why the hidden cost matters so much. The faster a person believes, the less space they leave for clear thinking. And the less clear thinking they use, the more likely they are to confuse a persuasive message with a dependable answer. Quietum Plus may look like an opportunity when seen through urgency, But urgency has a way of making weak conclusions feel strong. And once you see that, the next question becomes the one that should have come first from the beginning. Is Quietum Plus actually worth serious analysis, or is the interest around it being carried more by emotion than by clarity? Is Quietum Plus worth serious analysis? Yes, but not for the reason many people think. Quietum Plus is worth analyzing precisely because it sits at the intersection of discomfort, hope, and persuasion. Products in that position can become far more convincing than they deserve if the buyer is already emotionally exhausted. That means the smart move is not to dismiss it instantly, and it is not to trust it quickly either. The smart move is to slow down and look at it without urgency doing the thinking. A product becomes worth serious analysis when it is speaking directly to a real fear, a real frustration, and a real desire for relief. Quietum Plus clearly does that. It enters the conversation as a possible answer to something people feel every day, and that alone makes it powerful. But power in marketing is not the same thing as strength in reality. That is why the question should never be, is this popular enough to trust? The question should be, does the product still make sense after the emotional pull is removed? That is the standard that matters. If Quietum Plus still feels solid after the promise is separated from the pressure, after the pitch is separated from the pain, and after hope is separated from evidence, then the analysis has value. If not, then the attention around it may be saying more about the buyer's state of mind than the product itself. And that leads to the final point, the one that should shape the entire decision from start to finish. What is the most honest conclusion a person should walk away with after hearing all of this? The most honest conclusion. The most honest conclusion is this. Quietum Plus should not be treated like an obvious solution, and it should not be dismissed with lazy certainty either. It should be viewed for what it really is, a product that knows how to position itself in front of people who are already tired, already searching, and already emotionally open to the idea that one simple answer might change everything. That is exactly why clear thinking matters more than excitement. If someone looks at Quietum Plus with patience, realistic expectations, and enough distance to separate the message from the emotion, they are already making a better decision than most buyers do. Because the biggest mistake is not being curious. The biggest mistake is letting urgency take control before the product has truly been examined. When health concerns, money, and hope all meet in the same place, a person cannot afford to think like a desperate buyer. They have to think like an investigator. That is the standard this product deserves. Not panic, not blind faith, not instant rejection. Just honest scrutiny. Quietum Plus may sound convincing, but sounding convincing is not the same as being enough. And that is the point truth or toxic should always leave with the viewer. The smartest move is not to believe faster. The smartest move is to question better. The rule that protects you from regret. This is the rule that matters most when a product like Quietum Plus shows up at exactly the moment you want relief. Do not decide based on how strongly the message hits you. Decide based on what still holds up after the emotion fades. That single shift can protect you from wasting money, building false expectations, and handing your judgment over to marketing that was designed to feel personal from the start. That is the real value of this review. Not telling people what to think, but showing them how to think when a product is aimed directly at a fear they already carry. Quietum Plus may sound promising. It may sound calm, reasonable, and well-positioned. But that is never enough on its own. A persuasive message can create confidence long before confidence has been earned. And once a person understands that, they stop reacting like a buyer under pressure and start thinking like someone who refuses to be manipulated by timing, tone, or hope. So, if there is one thing to take away from this entire breakdown, it is this. The more urgent a product feels, the more calmly it should be examined. The more personal the promise sounds, the more distance the buyer needs. And the more a supplement seems to appear as the perfect answer, the more carefully that answer should be tested in the mind before it is trusted in real life. That is how smart decisions are made. Not by chasing relief faster, but by refusing to let desperation do the choosing. And that is exactly what separates a serious review from a polished sales pitch. What truth or toxic wants you to remember? This is the point that matters more than the product itself. Quietum Plus is only one example of a much bigger pattern. A supplement appears in front of people who are already uncomfortable, already frustrated, and already hoping for a simple answer. The message sounds calm. The formula sounds natural. The promise sounds close enough to relief that the mind wants to believe before the facts are fully examined. That is exactly where bad decisions begin. Truth or toxic should never be about pushing people toward blind trust or lazy rejection. It should be about teaching them to slow down when the pitch feels strongest. When a formula mentions ingredients such as yam, fenugreek, Quai, Motherwort, black cohosh, and ginger. What matters is not how impressive those names sound. What matters is whether the claimed benefits are being judged with discipline instead of desperation. People hear natural and assume safe. People hear support and assume results. People hear testimonials and assume proof. That chain of assumptions is where marketing becomes dangerous. So the takeaway is simple. Do not trust a product faster because you are tired of searching. Do not raise your expectations because the language feels comforting. And do not hand over your judgment just because the promise sounds like it understands your problem. Strip away the emotion, question the message, and then decide. That is how you protect your money, your expectations, and your peace of mind. That is what truth or toxic is here to do. The closing that stays with the viewer. At the end of the day, Quietum Plus is not just a product to look at. It is a test of how you make decisions when your discomfort is real. And the promise sounds exactly like what you needed to hear. That is why this review matters. Not because it tells you what to buy, but because it pulls you out of the emotional current that makes too many people trust before they think. If a supplement sounds perfect the moment you find it, that is not the moment to lean in. That is the moment to step back. The stronger the promise feels, the more carefully it should be questioned. The more personal the message sounds, the more discipline the buyer needs. Because in this space, the real danger is not only a bad product, it is a tired mind becoming easy to persuade. That is what truth or toxic is here to expose. The gap between what sounds right and what deserves trust. So before you believe the pitch, challenge it. Before you spend money, slow the emotion down. Before you call something the answer, make sure you are not just reacting to a story that was designed to reach you at the exact moment you were most vulnerable. If you want more reviews that cut through the noise, challenge the marketing, and help you think with clarity before you buy, stay with truth or toxic. Because the goal here is not to sell you hope. It is to protect you from false certainty. The end screen push that drives action. Before this video ends, leave the viewer with one last thought that keeps the tension alive. Quietum Plus may be the product that brought them here, but the bigger question is whether they now see how easily health marketing can shape a decision before the facts ever do. That is the emotional bridge into the next video. And it matters because a strong ending should not just close the review. It should make the viewer feel sharper than they were at the start. So the final push should sound like this. If this review changed the way you look at products that promise relief, then do not stop here. Watch the next breakdown, because the same pattern shows up again and again in this industry. Different bottle, different promise, same psychological pressure. And the more you learn to spot it, the harder it becomes for polished marketing to control your choices. That kind of ending does two things at once. It reinforces the message of truth or toxic, and it gives the viewer a reason to stay in your content loop without sounding forced. The goal is not just to ask for another click. The goal is to make the next video feel like the natural continuation of a lesson they now need to finish.